Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. Here it is Saturday, the first day of October 2022. Back in the office, back at home in Wilmington, North Carolina after just an unbelievable week to 10 days. We had Fiona, of course, tracking that. All of the ups and downs about do we go to Puerto Rico, do we go to Bermuda, do we go to Nova Scotia? And then, of course, Ian comes along. Just an incredible adventure. We got a lot done. I'm going to talk about that later, but we got to get back into the saddle, so to speak, for keeping an eye on the tropics. I did my early morning video discussion. That's the little short one, the What's Up in the Tropics feature. And so now we're here with the longer hurricane outlook and discussion. Hurricane season is not over, and so we don't just quit after something very big and historic like Ian. But Ian is still obviously a big topic of conversation. People are starting to just, realize what happened and how bad it was. And there are still consequences, still things happening with Ian in Florida, flooding, and of course the system itself, as you can see on our title card here, it's still swirling over parts of the interior mid-Atlantic states. So let's start over here on the National Hurricane Center homepage. Here's Ian. It is post-tropical, remnants of Ian, whatever you want to call it. And this is now being tracked by the Weather Prediction Center, and it's lost its tropical characteristics, so forth and so on. But something interesting could happen with it in the next few days. I'll show you that in just a moment. We're not completely done with Ian and some version of Ian. I'll show you that in a moment. All right, don't want to alarm you, but it's not over yet, okay? So then out here in the far eastern Atlantic, we have an area that is on its way to developing into a tropical depression or more over the next several days. That'll stay well out in the open Atlantic. No need to worry about that for the most part, except for marine interests. Meanwhile, we have a hurricane in the eastern Pacific. Surprise, surprise there. That is Hurricane Orlene, and that's going to make landfall up here in Mexico within the next day or so. And that'll bring the usual conditions, right? Hurricane conditions, very squally weather, flash flooding and mudslides in the mountainous terrain, storm surge at the coast. So this one is headed towards land. A lot of them this year have been able to manage to stay out and away, but this one is going to make landfall in central Mexico there. So we'll be following what happens with that. Not expected to get too terribly strong. You can look at that on the discussion. There's a lot of different ways to look at this. 90 miles per hour, though, Category 1 could get a little stronger than that. But remember, it's not just the category and what the wind speeds are. It is the totality of the impacts that you need to pay attention to, whether you're in the Pacific or the Atlantic or wherever. All right, so satellite animation today, courtesy of Tropical Tidbits. There's Hurricane Orlene in the eastern Pacific. Kind of has a small core and overall central dense overcast with it. So not a large hurricane, fortunately. This is the remnant area of energy from Ian, and we have this front in the high pressure area. Look at that. You can clearly see the outline of the ridge that helped to keep Ian from just scooting out into the Atlantic like that. It got blocked by this area of high pressure that set up over the western Atlantic. I'm just making a general outline of it. So Ian came up around and got pushed in, and it's sitting up here. That's not the exact track, but you get the idea. That is what happened. It got blocked, and so it's sitting here raining and some gusty winds from time to time, but a soaking rain event for parts of the interior mid-Atlantic, as I had mentioned. This is the tropical wave out in the eastern Atlantic. There's some Saharan air layer for you still out there, and then we got to watch some of this energy right here. It looks pretty innocuous right now, but as I'm going to show you in just a little bit, some of these sort of ghost systems out there now are the ones that are laying low now. You have to watch later, because that's exactly what happened with the genesis of Ian. It came from some energy from a tropical wave out here. We were all watching Fiona, and certainly we were on top of this, but these low riders that look like they're not doing much at these low latitudes, they can sneak in and develop when conditions allow. And I'm going to tell you something. It looks like conditions are really going to start to allow as we move further into October. This tweet here from Greg Diamond over at Fox Weather. This is what I'm talking about. And I'm going to talk about it more in the coming days. Education and understanding the big picture is a big part of the project. We don't just go out and chase storms and get in it just for the excitement and the adrenaline rush and, you know, get a paycheck from it. It is my living, yes, but there's also the overall bigger picture, the education that we can glean from these events and hopefully help people in the future. And there is still the incoming news, the ongoing news, stuff that's happening still now. Even though Ian has left Florida, the impacts from Ian are still down there. Look at these rivers that have reached their all-time highest levels. They've crested higher than ever before in recorded history since we've been around doing this scientifically. That's just incredible. So that's going to linger for days to come. That's going to make recovery efforts difficult. I talked about that, not trying to thump my chest too much, but I mentioned that several days before Ian's landfall, that the rain and the flooding could be a problem and would hinder the recovery process. And that is exactly what is happening. And it's because I recognize the impacts that were coming. It was a slow mover, large, heavy rain, all of that had added up to saying this could happen, and it is indeed happening right before our eyes. And it doesn't help with the recovery process. There are bridges out and other big-time problems. So I just wanted to point that out. It is still happening, even though Ian is gone. So look, I want to point out something too. A lot of dramatic video has come out of Florida, both from people that stayed and recorded very scary moments in their lives, as well as other people in the storm reporting field. Now, I don't want to call it storm chasing. That's more of a media, like, you know, sort of, what do you call it? My brain is still trying to come back to life. You know, that pop culture term, all right, storm chaser. There are people that do this for a living, obviously besides me, and they do a really good job of it. And we have seen some very dramatic video of storm surge, Max Olson's video from Fort Myers Beach, right up there with what we accomplished with Hurricane Michael just 4 years ago. Thumbs up to the effort from Max. You know, I don't have the monopoly on these boxes back here. Anybody can do it. It's a matter of how they do it, where they do it, and the effort they put in. But bottom line, we've seen some incredible video coming from the chaser community, so to speak. Again, that sort of pop culture vernacular. And I want to share a little bit from what we got. Not as dramatic, but I think it's at least interesting for a couple of reasons here. This is from our live cam that we had on Captiva. And I don't have time to prepare a map and get into all of that. I'm going to do that for our patrons, our supporters, on Monday. We're going to have a briefing on Zoom on Monday. So by the way, if you're one of our new supporters, yes, we do that, and it's kind of our own way of showing you what happened. And we're going to do that on Monday. So anyway, this is just a quick preview of what I got. So this is the setup the morning of landfall. Okay, this is Captiva from our remote cam. Exactly where this is, again, I'll go in that on my Zoom on Monday, and then I'll make that Zoom available on YouTube later in the week coming up. But this is Captiva, and we are facing, this would be the way off the island, the area. I guess that would be, I'm trying to remember the orientation down there. It's like southwest or something like that. All right, so that's the way out, all right? And I don't know what businesses and structures these are. We didn't stop and take all that information down. It is geolocated. We know where the camera is, but I don't have that ready for this presentation now. So let me just get on with it. I'm sorry if I'm frustrating you. So here is before, and that's what it says, obviously before Ian. And this is what it looked like the next day. All right, and I'm going to pause the video because something remarkable had happened. For some reason, all of our live cams, except for a couple, struggled with the connectivity to the LTE network. We use Verizon. Verizon is not a sponsor. We pay our bill just like pretty much everybody else, just making that clear. FTC stuff too, right? We use Verizon as a paid customer. It works almost flawlessly everywhere we go. But for some reason, in Southwest Florida, our signals were very in and out. And I have some theories as to why it was, and it's not necessarily, oh, it's Verizon, you know, whatever. I don't think so. I'm going to talk about that later after I look into it more. I want to make sure that I'm at least in the right ballpark for my theories, okay? So anyway, the cameras were off, they were on, they were off, they were on. We were watching Captiva right up until the moment that the eye wall was coming in, and it never really got crazy. It was bad, and then it went offline, and I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. And we get these little blips from Nest. Even just 1 second of video, as soon as it can connect, it'll send something. That's what's remarkable about the system that we use. So the next morning, the camera came back on, and we had 30 seconds here, 2 seconds there, 9 seconds, whatever, and I was able to capture some stuff off the Nest server through my account and do this before and after analysis. And I think that it is remarkable. This is the heavily vegetated area, and it's just like, I couldn't believe how thickly vegetated Captiva and Sanibel were. And now we know it is completely different. And all I got to do is just switch over to the after, and there it is. And like my caption said there, some of the trees are just completely gone. The ones over here on the left are just wiped out and completely thinned out. And the ones that are left, I want you to look at this right here. I know it's in the distance, but look at that tree right there. That's what it looked like after. This is what it looked like just a few hours before. It is completely covered in leaves. It's very thickly vegetated down there, and you can clearly see here it's denuded, as they say. It's stripped. We've seen a lot of evidence of that, a lot of reporting of that, and that's indicative. Wake up, Mark. It is indicative of very, very strong wind, and that is going to be helpful to understanding the wind power from Ian. We're obviously seeing the surge and rainfall impacts, but the wind and the pressure sensors and all that, like wind readings and pressure readings, are going to be crucial as well. And we do have some great pressure readings. We're working on all of that. I did want to spend some time showing you this because I felt like this was important before and after. You know, it's just dramatic what it did. Like that building, you couldn't even see that building. Maybe when it was windy and you're watching the live feed, hey, I think there's a building back there. But there it is. Just incredible. All right, so moving on along. Forgot to close that tab. It's not over the season. Oh, I remember why I wanted that tab open, and this is why right here, because I needed to show you some of the model guidance. Sorry, you just got to bear with me today, all right? I'm gonna do the best I can to get through all this. So yeah, let's go to the 850 millibar section, and this is Mark post-hurricane exhaustion, all right? So this is where we are. Let's slide this guy over here so I can keep everything at least in the order that I wanted it. So we do have those systems out there that we're watching, right? First, we're going to focus on Ian, which is right here. This is the energy left over in the Virginia, North Carolina region, whatever. That's the vorticity. That's the energy. There's still some energy there. And then there's the outline of that ridge of high pressure that I talked about. It extends out all the way across the Atlantic with a little bit of a weakness in it over in the east central Atlantic. There's the energy with that system that the Hurricane Center has outlined, or outlooked, whatever you want to call it. That's the one that we need to watch that could try to sneak in. And then over here, that would be Orlean in the eastern Pacific. Okay? So that's all of our pieces of the puzzle. So let's watch what happens over time. First, let's take a look at the energy from Ian right here. Watch what happens with that as I move this forward over the next couple of days. Yes, it tries to work its way out back over the Atlantic, and it might be enough of concentrated energy over, sorry, trying to get rid of the telestration, but I'm back. It might organize enough to at least be a wind machine, and that could drive water on shore. We just got to watch it. It's not done yet. The remnants could not intensify, but reorganize enough, that's the best word, to bring some coastal impacts. So we're going to have to watch that closely. And just for comparative purposes, the wonders here of tropical tidbits, let's move over to the Euro and see what it's showing. Doesn't have enough frames out to that far, so let's just go to the fast version. 48 hours, 72. Yeah, it kind of shows the same thing. You know, a little bit more organization with Ian after it moves off of the east coast of the U.S. So we're going to want to watch that just to be, ready in case it's a little bit more vigorous. I mean, even right here, this is about 66 hours out on the GFS. Again, enough energy there that the Outer Banks of North Carolina, which did receive some flooding yesterday from Ian as it moved in near my neck of the woods and into South Carolina. Yes, we do have to watch this. It could be a little bit problematic. All right. Meanwhile, there's our system out in the eastern Atlantic. There's the other impulse that we have to watch. Nothing alarming at all right now. We just scooch all this out. You see that one near the Cabo Verde Islands right here? That goes on to develop into modeling and goes off to the north and then dies out over the subtropics there. And then the other energy just kind of fades away, gets stretched out once we get out to about 8 days, okay? So we'll watch and see, because it's not over. It really isn't. There is plenty of warm water. These are the anomalies. So the warm water is there, but it's also warmer than it should be by a fairly substantial margin here, especially in the main development region. And while I'm not expecting hurricanes to come all the way across and right up the east coast, put a big X here, I don't think that's going to happen. The tropical waves will stay vigorous because the water temperatures out here are warmer than average. So any energy that we do get will come across, a lot of it, and it's going to end up over here, where we have to really, really watch it this time of year. And we have the La Nina over here in the Pacific. And look at this, over in the East Pac, off the scale cold. That's just been a really, really weird year. Way up here in the far North Atlantic, we had almost off the scale warmth. That has now flipped with a lot of cold anomalies, thanks to Danielle and Earl, and then most recently Fiona, a lot of agitating of the water up there. And now the La Nina has really strengthened, and that gives us a very positive setup, a favorable setup, positive for hurricanes to develop in the Caribbean for October and November. So we have to keep worrying. Well, worry, I hate that word. It's just more of a keep an eye on things. That's the better way to say it. Words matter, they do. I'm not worried yet, but we do have to keep a wary eye because the water temperatures are warmer than they should be overall. Now, the good news is, at least, the Madden-Julian oscillation, we're not going to have any large-scale favorability coming up anytime soon. This takes us out to the 11th. This is the JMA, the Japanese Meteorological Agency. But beyond that time frame, I was looking over here at our good friends at Storm 2K and the 16-day outlook that they do there. People discuss things going out through 6 days. Lots and lots of info here. And this one really caught my eye. A tweet that somebody had embedded into their post at Storm 2K. This is from Kalen. I often reference Kalen. And this is really interesting. The GEFS, that's the Ensemble Forecast System. By the way, Kalen had posted this yesterday, and he was looking at, this is 21 hours old, so yep, that's yesterday. And in fact, I should just scooch up here, right, so we get the context. So here's the thread from Kalen. Ian slowly dying off. There will be a short respite before the next wave of activity begins next week. These two waves in the eastern MDR, that's what we just talked about, are the next areas of interest as they move slowly west. And the different ensembles from yesterday especially were pretty bullish on mainly the eastern system getting going, and there was pretty good energy trying to be jumped on there from the EPS, that's the Euro, for the Caribbean system, the GEFS, that's the Ensemble Forecast System from the American Global Forecast System, also fairly busy with the tropics these next few days or so. Then, beyond that, this is what really struck me right here. In a pattern reminiscent, if I can talk, reminiscent of October and November 2020, the EPS, the Ensemble Prediction System from the Euro, has quite an extensive upper-level anticyclone across the Caribbean around the same time that wave would be tracking through, the one I showed you down near 40 West. This would be conducive to a high ceiling event for anything that would move into that area. So I'm going to just freeze it right here, the GIF animation. This is 156 hours out, and that is a very impressive area of upper-level high pressure. Nothing but deep easterlies down here, and so if anything gets in here with any decent energy, and it does try to develop, it's going to be in a very favorable pattern. Should it move north, it's game over for that system. The upper-level wind pattern would shear it. But we still have to be concerned with our friends in Jamaica, the Caymans, Central America, because they were hammered in 2020. Remember that. October especially was extremely busy. And just for the sake of making sure we don't ignore the possibility of impacts up here, we could get development that comes up and then the pattern up here changes and we get a more favorable upper level setup so that the winds are not too strong. You just never know. A lot of people were writing off Ian, and sure, had it come towards the Panhandle, it would have been a much different event. But Ian snuck in, darn near became a Category 5 hurricane, and made landfall in southwest Florida as a history-making event. And it was after a period of very quiet activity, and a lot of people were basically thinking that the hurricane season was going to be just a big fat zero. So things do change, and they can change in just a matter of a few days. And that's important to take note. All right, just trying to balance, making sure we pay attention to everything, not trying to be too scary with any of this because there really is nothing to worry about currently, but also not just ignoring everything because we're all kind of hurricane weary lately. Nature does not care about what we're going through. Believe me, it is going to do what it is going to do. All right, let me get this online for you all. I know it was lengthy today, but back in looking at things, I wanted to show you some stuff, so I appreciate you paying attention and taking in what I have for you. And on that note, a huge welcome to the several thousand new subscribers to the HurricaneTrack YouTube channel. As they say, don't forget to like, share, and hit the notification button. If you want to know when I post a video, especially when we go live, you got to do the algorithms a favor and whatever the mechanisms are that work with YouTube, and be notified, so that's there. And also a big thank you and a welcome to our new crowdfunding supporters through Patreon. A lot of you discovered what we were doing because of Ian and the exposure out there through Fox News and the Fox Weather. We're working with them this year. And of course the internet. People sharing stuff on social media is a big draw as well. And it means a lot to me that people trust what we're doing enough to watch and support and even contribute financially and through the donation of equipment, allowing us to do what we do. Always room for improvement, yes. And that's why we do this, because I want to keep moving forward and get that next play for whatever we're going to do next to the best of our ability. All right, now I'm done. Throw this online for you. You guys have a good rest of your Saturday. I'll have the What's Up segment tomorrow, then I'll be back Monday with the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion Monday afternoon.